The ghost ship. Admiral Vorj stood rigid at the center of the Imperial Fleet Command's bridge. His breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a curse. Above the tactical table, the holographic map of the system flickered, displaying a single new contact, a shadow moving too fast, too precisely. The bridge was silent except for hurried, hushed whispers from analysts and officers, as if speaking too loudly might somehow draw the Phantom's attention. Distance, Vorj asked, his voice low strain. 62,000 clicks from central perimeter. The sensor officer stammered. Antenna trembling. Closing fast, sir. No deceleration. Vorj stiffened, approaching at interstellar speeds without braking, without even slowing to system approach. Velocity. No braking, no identification markers, no transponder codes. The technician confirmed, pale green skin turning a sickly gray. It just appeared. That was impossible. Every ship in known space, every pirate skiff, every courier, every garbage hauler carried an ID signature baked into its hull at launch. It was Imperial law. A ghost ship without one was unthinkable. Visuals Vorj snapped. The main screen flickered once, then stabilized. Gasps and curses filled the bridge. It was sleek, not ornate like Imperial warships festooned with banners and carved hullwork, but brutally minimalistic, a shape of pure function. Its hull was matte black, darker than the void itself, bending starlight away like a hungry thing. It seemed less to move through space and more to carve it open, parting the vacuum in silent reverence or fear. It's human, someone whispered. The word hung like a noose over the command deck. Terrans, the ghosts of the Orion conflict. The species they thought eradicated after the Battle of Jara. Their homeworld burned, their colonies poisoned. The records showed the last human ship self-destructed rather than be captured. That had been 100 years ago. Yet here it was. Vorj turned sharply. Communications hail. It all channels. Already trying, sir, the comms officer said, fingers flying. No response. Wait, something. The transmission crackled into the bridge, cold and mechanical, speaking a language not heard aloud in generations Terran standard. You erased us. You silenced our children. Now we remember, now we return. The temperature on the bridge seemed to plummet. This was no threat. It was a statement, a verdict. Scramble defense squadrons, Vorj barked. Raise planetary shields. Alert the High Council. Another voice cut across the system, slipping past encryption layers like they were nothing. This is the SV Vengeance. No further warnings. Stand down or be dismantled. The message ended. Silence. The sensor officer croaked. It's accelerating. Vorj's heart hammered in his chest. No ship should have been able to accelerate at those speeds within a planetary system. And yet the Black Phantom was tearing the rules of physics apart like paper. Perimeter cannons, Vorj demanded. They didn't fire, sir? And another officer said, pale as death. The AI refuses to target. It doesn't recognize the vessel. Says the ship doesn't exist. Vorj's blood ran cold. On the screen, the black silhouette surged forward, one jump away from Corvallis Prime, the heart of the Empire. He leaned heavily against the console, feeling every century of the Empire's supposed invincibility crumble in his bones. They're back, he whispered. The Terran are back. Across Corvallis Prime, alarms blared, painting the sky crimson. Civilians spilled into the streets, staring up in horror as planetary shields shimmered into place. Orbital defense rings lit up, but no weapons fired. Inside the High Council's panic chamber, Chancellor Mio slammed her fist on the armrest of her command seat. One ship, and it's bypassed 5 fleets. 3 defense rings and every perimeter cannon we have. General Talek metals clinking on his broad chest bowed stiffly. Chancellor, we don't know how. The AI can't perceive it. Our targeting systems claim it's a ghost. Mu bared her teeth. It's there, very clearly there. Bomb. Talek didn't reply. There was nothing to say. The Empire, with all its armadas, its centuries of conquest, was powerless against something it couldn't even define. A junior advisor stumbled forward, clutching a datapad. Chancellor, he croaked, a deep archive just activated itself, not from the Terran ship, from inside our own vaults. Mu's eyes narrowed. Impossible deep archives aren't even connected to the network. They are now, the aide whispered. This one had had a Terran backdoor hidden since the Jara War. Mu's blood turned to ice. Play it. Static, then a voice, human, calm, terrifying. To the Empire, you taught us mercy was weakness. You taught us silence meant safety. You burned our skies, buried our cities. We are what you made us. A pause. This message is for the one who pressed the button. Mu's hands trembled. She remembered. She remembered the authorization order. the radiance bomb that turned Earth's upper atmosphere into fire. "I was following orders," she whispered, but no one was listening. Outside, the ghost ship drifted closer. No armadas stood in its way, no cannons fired, no gods came to save them. Because for the first time in centuries, the Empire remembered something it had long tried to forget. Humans did not beg. They endured, they remembered, and now they had returned. The message awakes. The air inside the High Council's panic chamber grew heavier, with each second thick with the stench of ancient fear. Chancellor Mo gripped the armrests of her throne-like seat until her knuckles turned white, listening as the ghost of a war, long buried, whispered through every speaker, every implant. The message repeated, slow, deliberate. "You erased us. You silenced our children. Now we remember, now we return." Mo's mind spun. This wasn't just vengeance. It was something colder, something older. Another tremor shook the council chamber. Distant sirens wailed through the fortress, palace vibrating against stone and steel. General Talek barked orders into his comms, summoning every available defense unit to the upper spires. But deep down, they all knew this wasn't a conventional threat. This was a memory-turned weapon. An aide, pale and sweating, stumbled forward with a datapad flickering violently. "Chancellor," he gasped, "the Terran ship, it's transmitting to the core archives now. Our history banks, genetic records, tactical servers, all of it." Mu's heart seized. How the archives aren't networked. "They are now," the aide whispered hoarsely. The lights flickered. Static bled across the council's main screens. For a brief moment, images flashed. The burning of Earth's skies, radiation storms, ripping continents apart, Imperial warships descending like vultures, children screaming into blackened heavens. And then the final message played, the one Earth's governor had sent into the void as their world died. "They came in peace, they offered lies. We bent the knee and they burned our planet. If you hear this, make them remember." The words crashed into Corvallis Prime like a silent bomb. Across the Empire's networks, the signal metastasized. On colony worlds, on fringe stations, even in hidden rebel holds. Screens once plastered with Imperial propaganda now bloomed with images of Earth's final days. The lie had unraveled. The truth had come roaring back. Mu rose to her feet, chest heaving. "We need to shut it down," she screamed. "EMP, blast hard, cut off anything." Tulek grimaced. "Chancellor, it's not just broadcasting, it's embedded. It's rewriting the data layers themselves. Our own systems are spreading it faster than we can isolate." Mu felt the walls close in. 100 years of carefully constructed history crumbling in seconds. She slammed her fist into the console. "We still have the Iron Guard. We still have planetary defenses. Find that ship and..." Another voice cut through the chamber, smooth and cold. A new Terran transmission. It wasn't a threat, it was a sentence. "This is the SV Vengeance. No further negotiations, prepare for erasure." Every being in the room stiffened. The sensor officer shouted from his post, "Sir, object detected descending through atmosphere." Vorst turned sharply. "What kind of object?" The tech swallowed. "Unknown small, fast, direct descent. No alarms triggered it, bypassed all tracking." Mu's stomach dropped. "What is it doing?" The officer's voice shook. "Landing upper, spire deck, Chancellor. It's walking." The chamber erupted into chaos. Security feeds blinked on, shaky and distorted. A single black figure moved through the palace's upper levels. It was massive, 9 feet tall, armored in scorched black plating, edges jagged like broken blades. It moved with a terrifying inevitability, stepping through Imperial defenses as if they weren't even there. Guards fired energy rifles. The figure didn't even flinch. It advanced silent and merciless. On its chest, barely visible beneath the scarring, 2 white letters still glowed. "Svi." Mu recoiled. "The ship's name," she whispered, "so vengeance." The feed crackled. For a moment, the figure looked directly into the nearest camera. A voice spoke, not a broadcast this time, not mechanical, personal, directed straight into Mu's private comm implant. "Chancellor Mu, you buried my family. I came to return the favor." The feed died. Mu stumbled back. She barely heard Talek barking commands, barely registered the activation of the Iron Guard, the Empire's last line of mechanical gods. Machines designed to wipe entire cities off maps when diplomacy failed. 12 titanic warbots, each the height of buildings, deployed to the upper vaults. The floor beneath them vibrated with the hum of concentrated killing potential. Inside the bunker, Mu stared at the live map, watching the Terran figure cut through the palace like a knife through silk. "They're not supposed to exist," she whispered, voice trembling. "They were supposed to be dead." Talek didn't answer immediately. His eyes were hard old. They adapted, he said at last. Terrans always do. We underestimated them because they bled easy, but they never forgot. A long, slow rumble rolled through the foundation. The vault door shuddered. From somewhere above, a voice, human, defiant, chilling, cut through every speaker in the fortress. You built gods. We built god-killers. Meo's legs buckled. The myth of empire supremacy, the invincibility they'd preached for centuries fractured. And somewhere in her bones, Chancellor Mu understood. This was no longer a war about territory. This was memory come alive, a memory armed and walking, and it was here for them. Black Descent. The first Iron Guard engaged the intruder 2 levels above the vault. The mechanical titan forged from neutronium and charged plasma fired a barrage powerful enough to shear through battleships. The Terran figure barely slowed. Security feeds captured brief jagged images. A flash of black metal, the Iron Guard's chest plate caving inward like paper, sparks, broken servos, and then silence. Inside the command vault, Mio clutched the sides of her chair as the bunker trembled with distant impacts. They can't stop it, she whispered. Talek grimaced. He had seen this before, only not in official history but in the hidden reports of the Jara conflict. He had seen how the Terrans fought, not with numbers, not with technology, but with the simple, horrifying will to endure. Alarms blared again, a new update. Thousands of atmospheric breaches detected across Corvallis Prime, unidentified pods streaking through the skies like falling stars. The SV Vengeance wasn't alone. On every major continent, across oceans and deserts, coffin-shaped Terran drop pods slammed into the ground, splitting open like seeds. And from them emerged soldiers, but not soldiers in the Imperial sense. They wore mismatched armor, scavenged tech stitched with primitive systems. Rifles that looked handmade but burned through the thickest armor. They didn't shout. They didn't call for surrender. They simply moved like a tide, coming to erase what should never have stood. Imperial soldiers scrambled to respond, but the chaos spread faster than orders could be given. Comms blacked out. Defense drones refused to engage, and entire outposts simply fell silent, swallowed without warning. Inside the vault, Mew stared at the live tactical feed as dozens of red emergency markers blossomed across the capital. We're being overrun, Talek said flatly. This isn't a battle, it's an erasure. Mew turned to him, desperation sharpening her voice. Deploy the orbital strike fleet. Cut the city off. Talek didn't move. They've already jammed high orbit. Our targeting relays are blind. The fleets can't even see the ground anymore. Mew slammed her fist against the console, the sound echoing hollowly through the chamber. This can't be happening. But it was. On the city streets, the Terrans moved with brutal precision. Power plants collapsed under targeted demolition charges. Communications hubs melted into slag. Tactical AIs began to cannibalize themselves, caught in corrupted logic loops, seeded by ancient Terran virus strains. Digital weapons from a forgotten war, now reborn. It wasn't just physical warfare. It was conceptual. They were burning the Empire not only from the ground up, but from the very idea down. In the sky, the second Terran vessel revealed itself larger, uglier than the SV Vengeance, scarred, stitched together from technologies even the Empire couldn't name. A graveyard given engines. From its hull, thousands of pods continued to fall, each one carrying a survivor, a fighter, a relic of Earth's final wrath. Mew could only stare, her mouth dry. The Empire had always taught that the Terrans were extinct, that Earth had been a necessary sacrifice, that peace had been built on righteousness. Now truth rained from the sky like fire. Inside the collapsing corridors of the High Council Palace, civilians huddled as Terran forces swept past, ignoring them. The Terrans only targeted military assets, government strongholds, symbols of empire. The people they left untouched, the oppressors they raised. In a forgotten alley, a security drone caught footage of a Terran soldier pulling a wounded Imperial child from beneath rubble, shielding them from falling debris. It didn't make sense. Mew watched the footage in stunned silence. They're not here to conquer, she realized aloud. They're here to destroy what we are, not who we are. Talek's face darkened. They're reminding us. The vault shook again. Closer now, the surviving Iron Guards fell back to defensive formation around the vault entrance. Their kill protocols activated target intruder, result immediate termination. But in the dim corridors beyond the Terran machine came not fast, not with urgency, with certainty. Clink, clink, clink. Each step sent vibrations through the floor. Each step sounded like a funeral bell for an empire that had forgotten how to fear. The guards opened fire. The corridor exploded into searing light and thunder. Energy bolts powerful enough to vaporize tanks slammed into the black figure. But when the smoke cleared, it still walked. It raised one arm. The iron guard nearest to it crumpled, crushed inward by an unseen force falling like a broken toy. One by one, the 12 giants fell silently, inevitably. Inside the vault, Mew stumbled backward, the image of the destruction reflecting in her wide, terrified eyes. Then the voice came again. Not broadcasted, whispered directly into her neural implant. You killed our world. Now we show you what a dead world can do. The system screamed, the vault, the vault. Lights blinked red, warning sirens drowned out speech. On the tactical screens, planetary grids flickered and died. From orbit, the second Terran ship fired its core. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, but a pulse that tore the Empire's grid apart at a molecular level. Lights across Corvallis Prime dimmed, then died. In the dark, Mew stood gasping for air that suddenly seemed too thin, too heavy. Talek drew his sidearm, face grim, standing ready. The vault door, the last defense of the greatest empire in the galaxy, buckled inward under a force no technology could measure. And then it began to peel, not broken, not blasted, simply peeled aside like wet paper under a patient, relentless hand. In the crimson emergency glow, the Terran stepped into view. A black titan, a memory made flesh, a reckoning, walking in silence. And in that moment, Chancellor Mew understood the truth. They had not come to fight. They had come to erase, to make the Empire remember what it had buried beneath lies. And there would be no mercy, only memory. The Wraith and the Betrayer. Above the ruins of Corvallis Prime, the SV Vengeance loomed in silent vigil, while its sister ship, the Graveyard, drifted like a scar across the heavens. The Empire's heart had been gutted, but vengeance was not yet complete. Inside the shattered command hall, the Terran forces gathered. They were not celebrating. There were no banners raised, no anthems sung. They simply planned, precise, silent, relentless. The throne once belonging to Chancellor Mew was gone, replaced by a crude metal platform, a symbol not of conquest but of memory. Around it stood the leaders of the Terran resurgence, old operatives from long-buried Black Ops units, survivors of colonies, scorched and forgotten warriors who had clawed life from dead stars. A holomap shimmered into existence above the platform, displaying a new target. Vakaris 4, the last loyalist stronghold. And there, deep beneath layers of ice and rock, was Grand Moff Kale, the betrayer, the man who had sold Earth's final defenses in exchange for power, who had whispered death into the ears of the Empire. One figure stood apart from the rest, cloaked in a battered gray coat. An old Terran patch faded on the sleeve. Her presence was still, but her eyes, one human, one glowing with cybernetic blue, burned with quiet fury. She stepped forward. I'll lead the strike, she said. The others exchanged glances. One finally spoke. It's suicide. She pulled back her hood, revealing scars that traced her jaw like old battle maps. No, she said softly, it's closure. Her name had been erased long ago. Now she was simply designation Wraith 9. She had fought at Jara. She had watched Earth burn. She had survived where others fell. And she had sworn that one day she would be the last thing Kale ever saw. The strategist nodded once. Permission was never needed. Only conviction. Moments later, a single drop pod launched from the underbelly of the SV Vengeance, a silent streak of fury cutting across the frozen skies of Vakaris 4. Below, inside his fortress, embedded within the planet's ice-crusted heart, Kale waited. His cybernetic form pulsed with stolen Terran tech. Around him stood the Lazarus Guard, monstrous remnants of forbidden resurrection experiments, half-living engines of rage. He smiled, a twisted mockery of what he had once been. They'll send her, he whispered into the frozen dark. They always send the ones who still believe. He sat upon a throne wired into the bedrock itself, his consciousness partially fused with the planet's systems. He could trigger planetary defenses with a thought. He could collapse entire ice shelves to bury armies. He had prepared for everything except a ghost. The impact of Wraith 9's pod cracked the ice for miles. Steam and shattered crystals sprayed into the void. She emerged from the wreckage, rifle slung across her back, an ancient kinetic weapon. No AI, no smart systems, just iron and resolve. The cold didn't touch her. The wind didn't slow her. She moved like inevitability made flesh. Through the first perimeter she walked, leaving security outposts burning behind her. Through the second layer she advanced, vaporizing the few Lazarus constructs that lumbered into her path. Inside the fortress, Kale watched through thousands of sensor feeds. He didn't issue commands. He didn't plead for reinforcements. He simply waited, smiling. "You survived Earth," he murmured, voice echoing through the corridors. "But you lost everything because you hesitated." The voice followed Wraith 9 as she advanced, slithering from broken speakers. From torn cables, Kale was trying to get inside her head. It would not work. In a narrow shaft, a horde of Lazarus beasts rushed her, twisted creatures of half-burned DNA and cybernetic rage. She dropped to one knee, fired twice each shot, clean and final. Headless corpses slammed into the ice walls. Still, she did not flinch. Still, she remembered. The inner sanctum was lit by a sickly blue glow, cables throbbing with stolen life. Kale stood at its center, arms spread in welcome. Behind him, tubes pulsed, each containing corrupted Terran clones, abominations created from the blood of Earth's fallen. "I tried to save us," Kale said, voice almost gentle. "But they chose death, they chose Earth, I chose evolution." Wraithline stepped into the chamber rifle, ready, but not yet raised. "You chose power," she said. "And when Earth wouldn't follow you, you burned it." Kale's smile widened. "Do you think you can kill me?" Wraith looked around. "I am this fortress. I am this world." He lunged, a blade unfolded from his wrist. A blur of sharpened void steel aimed at her throat. But she wasn't aiming for him. She fired into the tubes behind him. Chemical plasma erupted across the sanctum, engulfing Kale in a storm of fire and shrapnel. He screamed a raw mechanical wail that shook the foundations. Through the smoke, Wraith 9 advanced calm and merciless. She jammed the muzzle of her rifle into the smoldering ruin that had once been Kale's chest. "For Earth," she whispered, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed like the closing of a tomb. Kale's cybernetic frame spasmed, once then fell. The ground beneath the fortress shuddered. Without its master, the system began to collapse. Cascading failures rippled through the ice layers. The mountain began to crumble. Far above, aboard the SV Vengeance, the Terran fleet detected the signal. One word transmitted across the black, simple final. "Done." They did not wait. The engines of the graveyard ship powered up. No weapons fired, no bombardment began. Instead, it released its core drive, an ancient, forbidden device that didn't explode matter. It erased it. From orbit, Vicaris 4 imploded silently, folding into itself like a wounded animal retreating from existence. Where once had been a fortress world, there was now only a cold silence, where even the stars seemed reluctant to shine. And in that silence, Earth's children whispered one truth across the void: the betrayers had fallen. The memory endured. The collapse of empires. The fall of Vicaris 4 was not announced with grand declarations or parades. It was felt a ripple through the fabric of the galaxy, a tremor that cracked the spine of the empire itself. Across star systems still loyal to the ascendancy, silence spread faster than any official message. One by one, military outposts dimmed their banners, switched off their transponders, abandoned their posts. Entire fleets vanished into the void, unwilling to face the memory that now stalked the stars. And the empire, once sprawling and arrogant, began to collapse like a house built on rotted bones. On the border world of Isari Prime, once a beacon of imperial order, the governor's palace burned under the weight of its own people, civilians who had seen the footage, heard the recordings, remembered the lies. On the ocean stations of Velmoris, banners bearing the Empire's golden sigil were torn down and replaced not with the Terran flag, but with blank cloth, a declaration not of allegiance but of refusal. A refusal to believe in the myth anymore. In the heart of the Mid-Rim colonies, entire divisions of Imperial soldiers laid down their arms, broadcasting only one message: we remember Earth. We remember the truth. The collapse wasn't just military. It was cultural, psychological, total. The Empire had built itself on the myth that Earth was a necessary sacrifice, that the Terrans had been monsters, that their eradication had saved the galaxy. But now, with every feed, every transmission, every broken chain of lies, the galaxy saw Earth for what it truly was: a home, a tragedy. A people erased not because they were evil, but because they refused to kneel. The Terran forces didn't occupy planets. They didn't raise new empires. They moved like memories given form, striking at symbols, burning archives, releasing prisoners, whispering into the ears of the oppressed. You are not forgotten. You never were. On Corvallis Prime, the once mighty capital Chancellor Mo was marched through the ruins of her own throne room. Her hair hung loose, her robe torn, her wrists bound. Around her, civilians flooded the corridors, wide-eyed and uncertain, watching the fall of their own gods. The Terran soldiers didn't raise weapons against them. They didn't need to. The truth was weapon enough. Mew stumbled, glancing up at the makeshift dais where the simple iron platform now stood, a brutal replacement for her jeweled throne. There, a Terran commander sat silent, armored in scorched metal, bearing no insignia, no rank. The old ways were dead. One of the Terrans, a woman with short-cropped hair and a voice like iron, approached Mu. "You watched Earth burn," she said simply. "You counted the dead like numbers in a ledger. Today you get to watch something else. The death of everything you thought would last forever." Mu opened her mouth to speak, to plead, but the woman turned away. No trial would be held, no speeches made. There was no redemption left. The galaxy didn't need conquerors anymore. It needed witnesses. Across the deep voids of space, pirate relays and broken beacons carried one final Terran message, repeating over and over in every language known. Earth was never a place, Earth was a people, and we are everywhere now. In the ashes of the old order, a new movement stirred. Not a government, not an empire, a memory. A movement fueled by those who remembered loss, who remembered betrayal, and who refused to let history be rewritten again. Old imperial governors fled into deep space, chased by the ghosts they had created. Military strongholds became ruins. Trade stations declared independence. Entire species once cowed by the Empire's might rose up, some for the first time in generations. On the mining world of Karthus, children gathered around old flickering holograms, showing Earth's last stand not as a tale of defeat, but as a legend of resilience. On the floating cities of Hesperides, artists painted murals of Earth's burning skies, not in mourning, but in reverence. And among the stars, the Terran ships moved silently, watching, never claiming, never ruling, only reminding. A final uprising broke out on the fortress world of Terran Prime, one of the last holdouts of Imperial loyalists. It was swift, brutal, and complete. The survivors of the old regime who managed to flee told stories in whispers of black ships that moved without engines, of soldiers whose rifles sang songs of forgotten grief, of banners bearing no emblems. Only the simple, undeniable silhouette of Earth. Even the rogue warlords, those who thought they could seize power from the ruins, soon learned the truth. The Terrans were not there to replace the Empire with another crown. They were there to burn all crowns. Inside what was once the Ascendancy Council chamber, the last official transmission from the Empire's high command crackled into static. An unceremonious end, not with a final order, not with a battle cry, only with silence. And from that silence, a whisper rose, carried across every inhabited system. We remember. The Empire's bones lay scattered across the stars, its songs silenced, its lies exposed. No great monuments marked its passing. No grand historians chronicled its fall. Only memories, only stories told by the children of those it tried to erase. In a nameless outpost orbiting a dead world, a child pointed up at the sky where two black ships drifted like forgotten scars and asked, "Who are they?" An elder, once a citizen of Corvallis, knelt beside him, her voice soft. "Not conquerors," she said, "not rulers, just memory that walks." And somewhere far beyond the maps, beyond the edges of the galaxy's broken constellations, the SV Vengeance drifted in silence, bearing no flag, claiming no victory. Because for the children of Earth, victory had never been the goal. Only remembrance, only the simple, relentless truth. You can burn a world, but you cannot erase its soul. A new memory. In the quiet aftermath, the galaxy held its breath. Where once the Empire's iron banners hung heavy across systems, now only stars and silence reigned. No new government rose from the ashes. No Terran fleet landed to claim thrones. Instead, there was only the slow, stubborn beating of life rebuilding from the ruins. On Corvallis Prime, the broken capital, the streets where once marched Imperial legions became open forums. No leaders proclaimed authority. People simply gathered, sharing stories, trading food, arguing fiercely, laughing, hesitantly, remembering how to exist without chains. The throne room where Mayu's empire had ruled with a whisper of death was now a hollowed-out shell. No new throne was erected, only a simple platform remained, scorched, battered, unadorned. And everyday survivors came not to kneel, not to worship, to remember, to rebuild. Trell, once a minor functionary in the Empire's machinery, now sat on the broken steps each night, listening to farmers, engineers, children, anyone who had a voice. Sometimes she spoke. Mostly she listened. "This isn't the world we were promised," a young man said one evening, fists clenched. "No," Trell replied softly. "It's the one we have to make ourselves." Across the liberated systems, similar scenes unfolded. On the shattered world of Virex, long abandoned by the Ascendancy after orbital mining poisoned its oceans, refugees planted crops and contaminated soil seeds from vaults thought lost, now gifted by Terran supply ships. On the moons of Ethera, long ago deemed expendable, small communities rose in the ruins of old Imperial refineries, converting pollution-choked structures into homes, gardens, sanctuaries. They built not because they were ordered to, but because they could, because they remembered what it felt like to be forgotten. The Terrans themselves did not stay. The black ships drifted through the void like old ghosts, sometimes appearing in orbit over struggling colonies offering supplies, knowledge, a silent presence, then vanishing before the banners could be raised or songs could be written. They didn't want statues, they didn't want gratitude, they didn't even want remembrance. They wanted one thing, that humanity, true humanity, should never again forget itself. But not all was peace. Far from the heart of the fallen empire, new powers stirred. On the outer rim, remnants of old regimes, generals, warlords, profiteers began consolidating. They whispered of rebuilding, of restoring order, of bringing civilization back to the fractured galaxy. But every time a new banner was raised, a black ship appeared above their sky, silent, watchful, a reminder. And in those moments, without a word spoken, regimes crumbled before they could root. Some called it magic, some called it terror. The Terrans called it memory. 3 years after Corvallis Prime fell in a new city grown from the bones of the old capital, Trell sat on the crumbling balcony of what had once been a governor's palace. She watched children race across cracked marble courtyards chasing solar kites made from salvaged banners. She watched vendors argue over prices for fresh-grown vegetables, heard scholars debating philosophy in the old throne square. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, loud, infuriating, beautiful. It was alive. Beside her sat an old friend, the scholar, the one who had once unlocked the archive that doomed the empire. He sipped from a battered tin cup, squinting into the sunset. You know, he said, I used to think saving a civilization meant preserving its structures. Trell chuckled, brushing windblown hair from her face. And now, he smiled soft and sad. Now I know saving it means tearing down the walls so people can find each other again. They sat in silence, watching the sun bleed gold and crimson across the sky. Far overhead, a faint glimmer drifted against the stars. The SV Vengeance still watching, still silent. Trell found herself wondering, not for the first time, what the Terrans dreamed about now. Did they mourn what was lost? Did they ever dream of Earth, of oceans and forests that no longer existed, of cities ground to dust beneath empire guns? Or had they accepted that Earth was never meant to survive? That Earth was not soil and stone, but memory and will. A new kind of home carried in every heart that refused to forget. In the hidden corners of the galaxy, rumors still persisted. Some said the Terrans were building again in systems so remote even the old empire had abandoned them. Worlds forged from shattered moons carved inside dead stars, breathing new life where none should have existed. Others said they had no home anymore, that they had become something else entirely. A wandering people, a living memory. And somewhere on a small, nameless station orbiting a blue dwarf star, a new generation studied old Terran words carved into the walls. Memory is the true empire. Memory cannot be conquered. Years later, when historians tried to mark the end of the ascendancy, they searched for a date, a battle, a treaty. They found none. Because the empire didn't end with a battle, it ended with a whisper. A memory so old and so powerful that no fleet, no council, no weapon could stand against it. And in that memory, humanity rose again. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as survivors who had learned the most painful, beautiful truth. To endure is to remember. To remember is to rebuild. And to rebuild is to be truly human.